Hello! In today's video, I will be exposing the truth about PMAs. This is one of the most important videos that I have ever made, and is potentially one of the most important videos that you may ever watch. Because in order to understand the truth about PMAs, I will be exposing some of the most common myths and even outright lies that people are spreading about PMAs. Now, I know that many of you have found my YouTube channel because you've seen my introduction to PMAs video. That video is the most watched video on YouTube currently about the topic of PMAs, with over 7,500 views in less than a year. Unfortunately, based on the information that I will be sharing with you today, I have actually taken that video down, and so I invite you to share this video with your friends and family instead. And before I continue, I want to thank you, those of you who have watched my videos previously, shared my content, and subscribed to my channel. I could not do any of this without your faithful support, and I am so grateful for each and every one of you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please be sure to click that subscribe button so that you can continue to receive up-to-date and accurate information about private membership associations and more. Oh, and for those of you who may be new here, welcome. Please allow me to introduce myself to you. My name is Angela Harders, and I am a certified PMA advisor. I was trained through David Edwards' group, PMA Power, which has the largest PMA group in the world. I'm also a former special education teacher with over 12 years of experience in public schools. I'm an international best-selling author of over 20 books that I've written in the last 3 years. And I'm also the founder of PAX Ministries, whose mission is to empower families to live and learn with faith and freedom. But more important than any of those things, I am first and foremost a follower of Jesus Christ. My faith is very important to me, and even though I work with many different people of many different faiths, it's important to know that I do come from a very strong foundation of Christian beliefs and principles. And one of those principles is to be a lover of truth, because all truth is God's truth. After all, in John 14:6, Jesus himself said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Truth is very important to me, which is why I knew that I needed to make this video, so that you would know the truth too. And last but not least, I am a fanatic for freedom. In Galatians 5:1, we read, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not allow yourselves to be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." Because the truth is, we are free. That is our reality. God created us and intended for us to walk in freedom, which is why we often need a reminder that our rights come from God and not from government. But we cannot walk in the freedom that God intended for us if we are not also walking in truth. So before I share some of the myths and misconceptions about PMAs, let's review. What is a PMA? PMA simply stands for Private Membership Association. And while the term PMA may be new to most of us, the concept of a PMA certainly isn't. For example, have you ever joined a gym? Even though a gym is technically open to the public, you must become a private member in order to use their facilities. Or perhaps you hosted a game night at your house. Anytime that you are gathering with other people for a common purpose, you've formed an association. In this case, an unincorporated association, which is another phrase that people use when talking about PMAs. Or perhaps you've joined a Facebook group where you had to answer their membership questions and agree to their rules prior to being accepted as a member in their private group. All three of these are examples of associations, groups of people that are coming together for a common purpose. Associations can take many different forms. They can be for profit, nonprofit, incorporated, unincorporated, public, private, secular, religious or faith based, taxable, and even tax exempt. When establishing an association, it is important to be able to understand the benefits as well as the risks of being each of these things. Every possible business structure has its pros and cons, and it is so important for you to be well informed so that you can make the best decision for yourself and for what you want to create in the world. So, before I dive into the myths about PMAs, I want to share some other terms with you that you may encounter in your research. In addition to the term private membership association, many people also use the term unincorporated association, as I mentioned before. Or perhaps you've heard of the term faith based or religious organization, faith based ministry, free church, or perhaps you've even heard of the term 508c1a. Many people use these terms interchangeably, but they are not the same thing. And this brings me to our first myth that I will share with you today. Myth number one, a 508c1a is a PMA. Others say a 508c1a is a faith based organization or a faith based ministry. They may make the claim that as long as you're incorporating your faith, then you are a 508c1a. Or perhaps you've heard that a 508c1a is a free church, a church that is not incorporated by the state and therefore free from government rules and regulations. Unfortunately, none of this is true. To know the truth, we must go back to the source. The term 508c1a comes from 26 U.S. Code Section 508, Special Rules with Respect to Section 501c3 Organizations. At the bottom, we see Section C1a. Here we see that churches, their integrated auxiliaries, or associations of churches have a mandatory exception. But a mandatory exception for what? From notifying the Secretary of State that they are applying for recognition of 501c3 status. And what is 501c3 status? Section 501 is the section of the tax code regarding exemption from taxes. And Section 501c3 states corporations and any community chest, fund, or foundation organized and operated exclusively for religious, charitable, scientific, testing for public safety, literary, or educational purposes, that has no part of the net earnings of which inures to the benefit of any private shareholder or individual, no substantial part of the activities of which is carrying on propaganda or otherwise attempting to influence legislation, and which does not participate in or intervene in, including the publishing or distributing of statements, any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office. So, in order to be tax exempt, an organization must meet all of this criteria. Now, let's go back to Section 508c1a. It says that churches have a mandatory tax exception, which leads us back to myth number one. Do you see the words faith based association or faith based ministry here? No, you don't. Because the truth is that faith based associations and ministries are not protected under Section 508c1a. Now, I have heard many supposed experts say, but a ministry is like a church. A ministry may be like a church, but the truth is, a ministry is not a church. And perhaps you've heard people say, oh, but the IRS doesn't define what a church is. And that is true. The IRS doesn't define a church. In fact, it can't define a church. But the IRS does have a 14-point criteria to determine if an organization is a bona fide church or not. To find the 14-point criteria, go to Google and type in IRS churches defined. Then click on the first option, churches defined. This says the term church is found but not specifically defined in the Internal Revenue Code. With the exception of special rules for church audits, the use of the term church also includes conventions and associations of churches as well as integrated auxiliaries of a church. Certain characteristics are generally attributed to churches. These attributes of a church have been developed by the IRS and by court decisions. They include a distinct legal existence, recognized creed and form of worship, definite and distinct ecclesiastical government, a formal code of doctrine and discipline. In fact, these first four criteria are established in your church's bylaws and articles of association. Next, we have a distinct religious history, membership not associated with any other church or denomination, organization of ordained ministers selected after completing prescribed courses of study, The minister requirements are also included in your church bylaws because it establishes you as a minister, and you're also given the authority to determine the criteria by which you will ordain or appoint other ministers. Literature of its own. If you are a Christian, this is very easy because we base our faith on the Bible. Other religions also have their own holy texts, or you can create your own. Churches have established places of worship. Now, most of us, when we picture a church, you're probably imagining something that looks like this. And while this is a traditional image of what a church is, it's important for us to remember that a church is not the building. The church is the people in the building, which leads to the next point. Your church must have a regular congregation. This point is one of the main criteria that the courts will be looking for to determine if you are a legitimate church. And while there are many churches that begin in someone's home with just a few people, the idea is that your church congregation should be a consistent group of people coming together regularly for regular religious services. Most churches meet weekly, but some meet less often. The important thing is that you're meeting regularly with a consistent group of people that share your religious beliefs and practices. This could be in a traditional church building, in your own home, in nature, or even on Zoom. Next, we have Sunday schools for the religious instruction of the young and schools for the preparation of its members. Keep in mind that you do not need to meet all of this criteria, but you should be able to meet most of them. And as I mentioned, half of these are accomplished through properly written bylaws and articles. The part that you need to focus on is establishing a place of worship and conducting regular religious services with a regular congregation that would view themselves as members of your church and only your church. So now that we know the way that the IRS and the courts are identifying a church, we also need to understand what exactly is a ministry. To find the answer to this question, we're going to check out Publication 1828. You can find this publication with a quick Google search on the IRS website or via the link below in the description. One of the key things that I discovered in this publication is that it says because special tax rules apply to churches, it's important to distinguish churches from other religious organizations, which led me to wonder, what is the distinction then between a church and a religious organization? Let's keep reading to find out. Therefore, when this publication uses the term religious organizations, it isn't referring to churches or integrated auxiliaries. What? It goes on. Religious organizations that are not churches typically include non denominational ministries. This is very important for us to know. A ministry is a religious organization, not a church. The publication continues, making the distinction between churches and ministries even more clear on page 3. Under religious organizations, they write, unlike churches, again, making the distinction between churches and religious organizations. It says that religious organizations or ministries that wish to be tax exempt generally must apply to the IRS for tax exempt status. This means that your faith based association or your faith based ministry is not automatically tax exempt like a church is. And if you want to be a tax exempt ministry, then you must apply to the IRS for tax exempt status. The only exception to this rule is if your gross receipts do not normally exceed $5,000 annually, which is not going to be very many of us. So, going back to our first myth, I hope by now that I've shown you enough proof to leave you convinced that a 508c1a is not a PMA. It is also not a faith based organization or ministry. But is it a free church? Let's go back to publication 1828 to find out. In order to qualify for tax exempt status, churches and religious organizations or ministries qualify for this exemption from federal tax income under Internal Revenue Code Section 501c3 and are generally eligible to receive tax deductible contributions. To qualify for tax exempt status, the organization must meet the following 5 requirements. Number 1, The organization must be organized and operated exclusively for religious, education, scientific, or other charitable purposes. Number two, the net earnings may not inure to the benefit of any private individual or shareholder, meaning that you cannot have any personal gain or benefit from the funds that are given to the tax exempt organization. Number three, no substantial part of its activity may be attempting to influence legislation. Number four, the organization may not intervene in political campaigns. And last but not least, the organization's purposes and activities may not be illegal or violate fundamental public policy. So, this means that in order for any organization to be tax exempt, including a church, it must abide by these 5 requirements. Publication 1828 emphasizes this point by saying churches that meet the requirements of IRC Code Section 501c3 are automatically considered tax exempt and are not required to apply for and obtain recognition of tax exempt status from the IRS. Now, I believe this is a huge infringement on our First Amendment rights and freedoms, which state that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. But just because I believe it does not mean that my beliefs or my rights or my freedoms will be upheld in a court of law. So, a church under Section 508c1a is not really free. They're still required to meet this 5 criteria if they wish to remain tax exempt. So let's go back to our first myth. Again, I hope you're able to clearly see now that 508c1a is neither a PMA nor a faith-based organization, and it is also not a free church. But I want to remind you again, our rights come from God and not from government. We know this to be true. But just because we are free, that does not mean that we are safe, which is why this information is so important for you so that you can properly conduct a risk benefit analysis in order to determine the best course of action based on your own personal convictions and comfort level. Now, when I first started uncovering all of this, I felt extremely frustrated. I kept thinking, why did so many supposed experts not tell me this up front? I felt confused. If my ministry is not tax exempt, then what am I supposed to do now? The more that I started to dig and ask questions and research, the more I started to feel angry. Like, really angry. I started to share my concerns about what I was finding and researching with other leaders in the PMA power community. But they responded to me by saying, then you should probably stop doing this then. Another well known PMA YouTuber responded by saying, with all due respect, with this much doubt and constant research into how wrong we are, maybe it's time to reassess what is right for you. So rather than acknowledge my very legitimate concerns about our work as PMA advisors, I was very quickly shut down and dismissed. Since the leaders in PMA power refused to listen to me, I shared my concerns with some other PMA advisors that had left, and some of them had even been kicked out of David Edwards' group for asking questions similar to my own. And when I shared my concerns with them, they responded by telling me, we are concerned too. We want people to know the truth. And so together, we formed our very own unincorporated association, if you will, in an attempt to try to fit together the pieces of this puzzle so that we would know the truth about PMAs for ourselves and then be able to share that truth with you. Our team has spent countless hours meeting together multiple times a week, with some meetings lasting over 12 hours as we poured through countless case studies, IRS codes, and court decisions. We have consulted with several different attorneys, CPAs, IRS agents, and other experts that could help to answer our questions and bring clarity to us so that we can now bring that same clarity to you. And we have finally compiled a 25-page document of all of our research called the PMA Manifesto, which is now available on thepmamanifesto.com or via the link below in the description of this video. Today, I share with you just one myth about PMAs and 508c1As, but in the PMA manifesto, you will be able to read and learn about all 12 myths that you need to know about PMAs, especially if you have a PMA or 508c1A, or if you are thinking about getting one in the future. These 12 myths will save you literally hundreds of hours of stress and research that we have all done on your behalf. This will literally save you thousands and thousands of dollars. And it could potentially even save you years in prison for not handling your income or your taxes properly. While we are on the subject of taxes, please allow me to issue a brief disclaimer here. This is not financial or legal advice. This is purely for educational purposes. Please be sure to seek the advice and counsel of someone qualified to assist you with any financial or legal matter. Thank you. I imagine that some of you may now be feeling as I did when I first learned the truth about PMAs. You may feel frustrated, confused, and perhaps even a bit angry. But I know that after reading the PMA manifesto, you will feel supported, knowing that you are not alone in figuring this out. We are here to walk alongside you and guide you as you may make any necessary changes to your founding documents or as you draft new ones. You will feel peace knowing that you are walking in truth and in alignment with what you believe that God is calling you to do, and knowing that you are doing it with integrity before God. And you will feel hopeful because at the end of the day, our hope is in God and not in our government. There are answers to our questions, and there is a real and practical solution to our problems, and we are here to help you. In addition to the PMA manifesto, we would like to offer you our support in a few different areas. We are offering a free monthly newsletter that will continue to share information and resources to help you operate properly, weekly group calls so that we can answer your questions and provide additional clarity for you. We are also offering one-on-one consultations if you would like to speak with us directly or privately in order to make a strategic plan for how to move forward and determine what, if any, changes need to be made to your current PMA or 508c1A. We offer document review, so if you currently have a PMA or a 508c1A, we are more than happy to review the documents that you currently have and to be able to provide you with our thoughts and our opinions and our advice about different options that you may have. We also offer document revision, so if you need assistance with revising certain clauses or articles within your founding documents, we can help you do that too. We also will offer a done-for-you document drafting service, as well as new DIY templates so that you are empowered to draft your own founding documents. We will also be offering online and self-paced courses to help you in your education and in your knowledge regarding operating your for-profit and nonprofit entities. Be sure to check out www.thepmamanifesto.com. Also, please share this video with your friends and family. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell so that you can get the most accurate and up-to-date information about PMAs and more. And if you'd like to connect with me personally, please reach out to me on social media at Peaceful World Schooler on TikTok and Instagram, or Facebook at Peaceful World Schoolers. Also, I invite you to check out my own personal website, paxministries.com, if you're interested in receiving any marketing and web support, educational consultations, homeschooling and unschooling support, transcript and diploma services, editing and publishing services, gentle parenting courses, private tutoring, as well as get the latest information about our Peaceful World Schooling trips. I cannot wait to see what you create for yourself and for your family and for the world. I know that it will be something beautiful.